Hey guys, it's Russell back with DieselGiant.com. You know what this is? It's a wheel bearing set. Behind me is my 98 Jetta Tdi. It's got 364,000 miles and some change. The original rear wheel bearings lasted 315,000 miles. Yes, 315,000 miles. Both of them lasted. Original Mexican grease, original German, same brand, FAG, wheel bearings were in there. I did not repack those wheel bearings. I wanted to see how long they would go. They went 315,000. So I went to Volkswagen, to the dealer, and got a set of factory Volkswagen rear wheel bearings. Put them in. Well, first they're Mexican. And you know, that's okay because this car was built in Mexico and it's not going to die anytime soon, so I'm pretty impressed. But put the rear wheel bearings in and they lasted about 15,000 miles. That's it, 15,000 miles. So after I investigated the cause of it, I found out that the grease that I had used had separated. I noticed it in the tube. I went back and looked at it. It had separated out, and when I packed the wheel bearings, I only got part of the grease. So, no fault of the Volkswagen wheel bearings. But I had to put another set in, obviously, and I'm going to have to bust on this. I used the Mobil 1 synthetic grease for wheel bearings. Now, you can pick this up at almost any part store. I got it at Advanced Auto Parts. This is supposed to be good grease. I'm going to tell you, stuff is garbage. 30,000 miles later, we're at 364,000. 30,000 miles later, the wheel bearing's out again. So I'm like, all right, what's the deal with this? So I pull the wheel bearing off, and what do I find? The grease had washed out. Now, I usually repack wheel bearings around 40 to 50,000 miles, so it wasn't time to. There's plenty of grease in there, but what happens is grease there's a lot of specs to grease. Whether it's synthetic, parasynthetic, conventional, it doesn't matter. They have what's called a washout rate. Well, apparently that Mobil 1 grease has a terrible washout rate. Now, if you're familiar with wheel bearings on a Jetta, on a Volkswagen, they just basically have a cap that goes over, which you're supposed to replace, which I did, but it's semi-waterproof, semi-dustproof. But what had happened was, over a period of 30,000 miles, moisture had worked in there and had basically washed the grease away from the bearing itself. The reason I know this, that it was moisture, is because there was a slight amount of rust in there on the bearings. And these are regular tapered roller bearings, which I will show you later. So, that wheel bearing is the one that's on the passenger backside. The passenger driver's side, which I did at the same time, has not gone out yet. So I am going to show you today how to replace wheel bearings, rear wheel bearings, and the races. I'm going to show you how to check for wheel bearings that are bad. I can't really let you audibly hear what it sounds like because when the bearing goes out, it makes a very noticeable, very slight roar. It's easier to see if it's on the front because you can load and unload the vehicle easier on the front tires and try to figure out which one it is. But when you jack the car up, if you have a bad wheel bearing, it's very apparent which one it is before you even take the wheel off. So on today's video, I'm going to show you how to check for a bad wheel bearing. I'm going to show you how to inspect the wheel bearing that's in there to try to find the cause of why it failed. And a lot of times it is usually lubrication related. Some people just let it go too long. I'm going to show you how to replace the races that are in there, install new races, repack the new wheel bearings, and then reassemble everything back together. Now, the grease that I'm going to use this time is pretty expensive. This is probably the grease with the lowest washout rate that's made. It's made by Conklin. It's called Rhino grease. Now, there's some other grease out there if you Google it called Rhino grease, but the stuff that you want is made by Conklin. This stuff it's like a booger, okay? You just can't get it off your finger. So This stuff has a tenacious grip. It's great for wheel bearings, universal joints, things that have a lot of load or shock load to them. So wheel bearings are a perfect way to test this grease. So I'm only going to do the wheel bearing that failed this time, and then later on, whenever the other wheel bearing fails, we'll do a comparison video to see and ultimately see how long the wheel bearing that we're going to do today is going to last. So I'm going to get the car set up. I'll bring the camera back there and show you how to check, see if your rear wheel bearing is bad. All right, we're back here at the passenger rear wheel. I've got the parking brake off and I've got the vehicle secured up so we can remove this wheel. But I want to show you what it sounds like when you have a bad wheel bearing typically. Now, this right here, you're just hearing the brake shoes inside the brake drum, but when you load and unload from top to bottom, hear that clicking? The wheel is actually, it's a little loose on the wheel bearing itself. Alright, I'm going to take my DeWalt half-inch impact gun. I've got a 17-inch impact socket. Now I do want to tell you again, make sure that you have the car secured. The car right now has the floor jack under it, but I have a jack stand underneath the rear axle beam. Okay, so this is your brake drum right here. Okay, what we're going to do is I'm going to pull this cap off right here, and this cap is going to reveal how we remove the drum and the wheel bearing out. Alright, so I'm going to take a small, you can take a flat bladed screwdriver or a small pry bar like this, and just take I'm going to take a dead blow hammer and just very gently hit around the edges to get that cap out. You don't need to do it very hard. Okay, cap comes out just like that. Okay, now you see that there's a cotter pin right here, and you can either do this with a screwdriver or you can do it with a pair of needle nose pliers or wire cutters or whatever you want to use. We do not use cotter pins, alright? This is the only thing that's holding this nut, this wheel assembly when it's bolted to the brake drum on the spindle. And what I like to do is grip it and then just use a hammer, and the cotter pin comes right out. Now behind that, you're going to see this little, like a serrated star. And then, right here, we have the nut. Now this nut is not supposed to be really tight. It's supposed to be snug, but it's not supposed to be preloaded on here. Okay, that comes off. Then at this point there is a small washer and the washer itself has a little keyway on it, like a little tab. Okay, and then at this point, again, make sure that you've got your parking brake off. This is the outer bearings. and I'll show you a close-up of those later. One trick you can use, if you want, you can take two of the wheel studs, screw them back in there, okay? So it comes off just like that. Set that aside. Now all the grease right here, when I took this off to inspect it about, I don't know, 2 weeks ago, I re-greased everything, which did help, by the way, but that's not going to cure an issue. Now inside the brake drum we have a seal right here, and I'm going to reposition the camera so that you guys can see the close-ups of this before I actually do it. Alright, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a seal puller. If you don't have a seal puller, you can just use a screwdriver. I'm going to just get one edge, and it comes out that easy. Okay, that is a dust seal / grease seal. And looking at this grease, it looks okay. Here's the inner bearing, and it looks fine. So the outer bearing, the one that we pulled out, was the one that had the problem. Now the reason I can tell this is fine is because the bearing is very smooth. I don't see any rust or any moisture in here. It's still coated in a lot of grease. So I could have just replaced the outer bearing in the race, but we're going to do the whole job because I want you guys to see how to do it. So this part is just really messy. Just hopefully you've got gloves. Just dig the grease out as best you can. And this is all the Mobil 1 garbage. Alright, so I'm going to flip this over. And I'm going to do the same thing on this side. Alright, so inside here there are 3 notches in the casting of the brake drum so that you have something to drive the bearings out. Okay? There are little reliefs, and I'll show you a close-up of this later when these are actually out. It'll be easier to see. But that's where we're going to take I'm going to take a small punch that's that size, and I'm just going to take a hammer. I'm just going to work my way around till the race is out. Okay. And I'm going to take the same punch, and I'm going to hit on the relief areas where the bearings are, or where the race is. Okay, I don't know if the camera's picking that up, but in there you should see 3 areas, like one there, and one on the other side. And they're on both sides. That's a better shot. There you can see all 3 of them, if I get the light right. Alright, so now that we have the old races out, we're going to do the inner race first. So this is how these fit in, by the way, if you've never seen tapered bearings. I'm going to put that back in the plastic. And make sure to remember that the side that's got the edge is the side that goes in. Now, the best way that I've found to install these is to take the old race, make sure it's clean, and you can see obviously the two races line up right there. So just get that centered, take the old race and put it on top so that we're just hitting on the race itself. And I like to take a dead blow hammer, kind of like I used before. You can take a bushing driver to start this with if you have one. If you don't have one, you can just very carefully use the hammer. Okay, so that got it started where it's not slipping around, because these are actually for these type of bushings. They're not really for races, but if you're going to be doing races like this, you need to use metal. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take this and put it on the floor so that I'm not going to be losing the force of the hammering. And if you can see in there, it's got about a 1/4 inch that we have to drive it down. There's a lip inside the cavity of the brake drum that will let us know when we're all the way secured. Okay, so I've got the brake drum on the floor, and I've got the old race here. And another trick you can use is to take a socket. This is a 1.5 inch Craftsman socket. It's got a 3/4 inch drive. I'm gonna tap this in a little bit like this, just to try to get it started a little bit more. Okay, then I'm going to take the socket and put on top of here like this. Just constantly check and make sure that the race is going in straight and square. Okay, so just get a small flat-bladed screwdriver, and if it fits in there. Okay, so again, it's going to be tight when you hit it, the old race, and just usually this trick works, popping out with a screwdriver. We're just going to flip this over, and we're going to do the exact same thing that we did. We've got our new race here. We're going to set it right in there like that. Alright, so I went and got a 1 1/16 Craftsman impact socket, which fits in there perfect, and it's not going to stick on the side. So just run your finger around there, make sure that it's completely seated. Yep. So 1 1/16 socket, if you want to use that after you get it started with the old race, or just don't use the old race. Okay, so alright, so here is the bearing itself, and I don't know if the camera's going to pick it up, but you can see, like right there, again, I had repacked these. This thing was just full of rusty grease. So I'm going to take our outer bearing here, or inner bearing, I'm sorry, and just going to get a bunch of grease on here. And then I'm just going to start rubbing it in. Now there are pressure packers you can buy for this. But I just do it by hand. And I'm going to coat the inside of the race. Okay, then set the bearing in there. Okay, make sure this has a outside and the inside that goes towards the bearing is double lipped. So it's very easy. Just take the, in fact, a lot of times you can just press it in with your hand. Just like that. I'm going to flip this over. Lay that like that. I'll go ahead and get a lot of grease ready. And I'm going to pack this just like I did the other one. Alright, so I went ahead and greased the stub axle. And I made sure the brake inside the brake drum was clean. So I'm going to take the brake drum and just slide it back on. Okay. Then I'm going to take the outer bearing, slide that in, and make sure you put it on. It's got the little tab, it can only go on one way. Okay, and I'll put the nut back on. Now, the way that you're supposed to do these, and the way that I've always done them, is just take a pair of pliers and just cinch them down a little bit while you're rolling. Okay, and that's it. If you put too much force on them, they're going to cause undue stress on the bearings. The next thing we want to do is we want to take our little star ring and put it right there to where the cotter pin hole is going to be right in between one of these little tabs. We're going to take our cotter pin and insert it in the hole. Make sure it's on all the way around. And there we go. So hopefully this is going to last a lot longer than 30,000 miles. If the other wheel bearing goes out, I will do another video to let you guys see it before I do any wheel packing. In 50,000 miles, we're going to open this wheel bearing back up and see how well the Conklin Rhino grease did. So I hope this video helped you guys. This job, I would estimate, would cost probably $250, $300 at the dealer. The price of the bearing, a little bit of grease, and some common hand tools, and you can do it yourself and save a lot of money. So I will see you guys on the next video.